Hi guys! Let's talk about our inner child. I know some people find the concept of inner child or like inner child healing to be like cringy or lame. And as somebody who was skeptical at first, let me tell you, it works. Chances are you've actually heard of the terms inner child healing, inner child work, inner child shadow work, whatever it may be. It's there. When I first started healing and I found out about this whole inner child concept, I was skeptical at first because I was like, does this really work? Like, what does this entail? Like, what is it talking about? But I was also intrigued because as someone with a lot of childhood trauma, I felt like this was like a perfect activity for me. I need to stop saying like so often. Jeez. But the problem was, I had no idea how or where to start. I looked up a lot of tutorials about how to heal your inner child, and like I looked at tons of blog posts, tons of different testimonies, and all the all the information. Not all the information, but like a big chunk of information out there. A lot of it was very vague, and like I don't necessarily fault those people because it's a very personal journey to heal your inner child. And not just your inner child, just to heal yourself in general. So what works for somebody else might not work for you, and that's completely fine. But it is frustrating. And I know a lot of people are feeling the same way, or at least very similarly. And that's why I wanted to share my personal inner child healing journey in the hopes that it kind of clarifies a couple of things and possibly gives you new ideas to start healing your inner child. So let's go. Before we start, let's actually define what an inner child is. And if you already know, you can skip this part. An inner child is exactly what it sounds like. It is the child version of ourselves that lives within us. You know when something happens in your life and you feel like you're a kid again? This could be a positive experience or a negative one. For example, if you go to Disneyland as an adult, you might feel like a kid again because of that childlike joy and playful nature of a theme park resonates with your inner child. A negative experience may be an authority figure or a parent starts screaming at you and you kind of revert back to your childhood form of feeling helpless and feeling ignored. But more specifically, inner child healing and inner child work has to deal with the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind influences how and why we behave the way that we do. It's the memories, beliefs, experiences that we had as a kid. So the lessons we took away from those experiences dictate how we live the way we do right now. I know certain people don't really like using the term inner child healing for various reasons, but it's just a metaphor. It's more about our emotions and the behaviors that stem from it, and there's probably an emphasis on inner child healing because our childhood kind of makes up who we are as a person. Basically, it's all about our noggin. Now that we know about what an inner child is, how the frick do you heal? The first step, before you even start healing, you have to find your inner child and connect with them. Your inner child has to get to know you and trust you in order to start healing. This might not make sense for some people, but it made sense for me. What I did was try to remember what I liked as a kid. And this was really freaking difficult because, once again, I have childhood trauma, and apparently a symptom of childhood trauma is that you can't really remember your childhood, so that's that. What made sense in my brain is kind of like I'm bribing her with a lot of cartoons and books and chicken nuggets and things like that. I'm like laying a trap out for her and just hoping that she takes the bait. But what ultimately worked for me was having a creative outlet. So when I was younger, I loved descriptive writing. I loved writing in general. And that apparently kind of brings out my inner child. And I just randomly stumbled upon it. Revisit your childhood hobbies, maybe go to the neighborhood you grew up in, maybe just have some comfort food, like childhood comfort food. Just do whatever that your inner child might like what you liked as a kid. What I also like to do and what helped me a lot was imagine my inner child to be my imaginary younger sister. And I would just do things with her. I would write, I would watch cartoons, we would have some chicken nuggets together. I really liked chicken nuggets as a kid. Don't get me wrong, this is not all fun and games. I'm just talking about like cartoons and like chicken nuggets. So it kind of seems like fun and like childish and like joyful, and it is, but that's not everything. It's hard work, and that hard work comes into play in step 2. And step 2, identifying the trauma. I couldn't start to heal unless I knew what to heal from. What I did was I sat down and I tried to think of every single instance where my inner child was hurting. Anything she was upset over, anything she was angry about, anything she was sad about, anything she needed closure from, I wrote it down. I also tied this in with my current unhealthy behaviors that were most likely caused by an unhealed inner child. A really good example of this is hyper independence. I do not ask people for help. I cannot delegate. Even if I do need help, I will much rather just drown in my own work rather than ask for help. But then I realized that it was because I was heavily emotionally neglected as a kid and I had a lot of unmet needs, and I developed a habit of being independent because I didn't have anybody to rely on. So I made a list of my current behaviors that were most likely tied to a wounded inner child, and also the list of instances where my inner child needed closure. This took so freaking long because I sat down with the intention of figuring out everything within like a couple of hours. Yeah, this took me a couple of months to get out. A lot of these memories, they're not going to come up at a very convenient time. A lot of the times they are going to bubble up to the surface at a very, very inconvenient time, and it's gonna freaking hit you like a tsunami. So I remember this one time I was making tea in the morning and I was like, you know what, the sun is shining, I am going to have a good day. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, no triggers, no nothing, no warning, all of a sudden I had this horrible repressed memory just come up and just attack me. And it was not a good day. And whenever that happens, whenever I remember a repressed memory or whenever I remember a certain behavior that I have that I could correct, I immediately write it down. I know some people have a specific journal reserved for their inner child work. Some people just like to write it on a piece of paper. Some people like to write it on their computer or in their notes app or whatever. But just wherever you write it down so you do not forget it. Step number 3 is reparenting yourself. After identifying all of the trauma, I would actually use it to reassure and reparent my inner child or my imaginary younger sister as if it was happening for the first time. For example, I was berated and belittled at home because of a dance recital I was a part of, and it was really unfair that a lot of my other peers, everybody else on my dance team, had very supportive parents. They would come with like a bouquet of flowers, they would come with like signs, and they would be like, oh my god, we're rooting for you. And my family, they came with insults. And I would use this very hurtful scenario and I would pretend as if my imaginary younger sister was saying this to me, like she went through the same thing that I did. And I had the chance to tell her that she was doing amazing. I don't want to be dramatic or anything, but I am a very dramatic person, but I felt like I was rewriting history in a way. I didn't heal right away after I said this. The same topic came up multiple times over and over, but the more I talked about it, the more I reparented my inner child, it kind of faded. And some people are going to be like, you're just talking to yourself. And like, yeah, you are talking to yourself, but you're talking to yourself in a way that heals you. Another way that I reparented myself, I'm not sure if this is like the official way to do it or anything, but there is no really like an official way to do stuff. I would watch great examples of parents being there for their kids, and the number one example that I have is Bob's Burgers. Every single time a Bob and Tina scene would come up, I would just immediately burst into tears. So that's why I almost always cry watching Bob's Burgers. Like, it's really bad. It's a freaking comedy, but I'm always in tears. In my mind, whenever I saw examples of great parents, it kind of reminded me that, you know what, I am worthy of having great parents too. I am worthy of being treated with respect. Healing your inner child isn't just about fun and games. It's about addressing what you needed back then and what you also need right now. And guess what? My inner teenager came out. I'm not sure if this is like a psychological term or whatever, but that's the best way that I could describe it. My inner child needed a lot of security and a lot of unconditional love, but my inner teenager wanted revenge. She wanted heads to roll. She wanted to set the world on fire. Like, she was so freaking pissed. In the beginning, I was like, oh my god, I did it wrong. I healed wrong. That's why I'm so angry. I fucked up. But apparently, this is a somewhat normal, or at least a valid reaction. And it was really difficult to start healing her because she didn't listen to reason. She felt betrayed, she felt like she couldn't trust anybody, and she was so pissed off that she was fucked over as a kid when she felt so helpless. What I did was the same thing as I did for my inner child. I was basically just like a big sister to her. Because I was so emotionally neglected in my life, I think that my inner child and also my inner teen, they just wanted a friend. My imaginary teen and I, we would go on long road trips with screaming, angry emo music. We would also go to random cliffs in the middle of nowhere and just scream at the top of our lungs. I would buy her all of the stuff that she wanted as a kid. I would just kind of like just be there for her if she wanted to vent or if she wanted to just express herself or do something. But also a very important thing that I had to do was correct her behavior when she was being unreasonable and try to educate her without invalidating her. And the thing with healing, not just your inner child, but like healing your trauma in general, is that you kind of like re-traumatize yourself because you have to address what happened to a certain extent. And it's really exhausting and it can be super draining. So just take things at your own pace. Remember to not rush it. Just trust me, do not. To wrap things up, number 1, you have to find and connect with your inner child. Number 2, you have to identify what you need to heal from. And number 3, you have to reparent yourself. I'm still healing my inner child and especially my inner teen because she is wild and she is very unhinged and I have no idea how to contain her right now. But I have felt the positive effects of healing my inner child already, so I highly recommend it. Of course, these are just my personal experiences and it's very specific to who I am as a person and my inner child. So this might not resonate with you and that is completely fine. But what I do want to say is that I hope that you don't feel the need to kind of rush through this healing process because it's very triggering, it can be very draining, and it's really emotionally tough. I actually did this in the beginning because I was like, you know what? I just want to get it out of the way. I'm done. Like, I just want to heal quickly, as if it was kind of like a to-do list. But the more I rushed it, my body went into panic mode. Like, literally. That was the first time in my life that I got nocturnal panic attacks. And it was because I was triggered by my past trauma. So trust me, it is not worth it. It is going to take a lot of time. Take things one step at a time, and please take as many breaks as you need. I'm not an expert when it comes to inner child healing or healing in general. I am just another random person on their healing journey, so I might not be that much help. But if you do have a question about inner child or healing, you can leave them below and we can probably find an answer together. That is all I have for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wish you all the best of luck on meeting your inner child or teen. You're gonna need it.